Amsterdam is one of Europe's most exciting capitals, full of old world charm, yet cosmopolitan, a world city on a personal scale. It is a city of friendship and hospitality. With just under 800,000 residents, Amsterdam is a compact city, but it has everything. Rich contrasts give Amsterdam its atmosphere. It's a city with a great history and a great future. A city where everyone feels at home.
International Video Network welcomes you on this video visit to surprising Amsterdam.
Amsterdam is the capital of the Netherlands, a small country in northwestern Europe, lying across the North Sea from Great Britain and bordering on Germany in the east.
The Netherlands, or Holland as it is often called, is a constitutional monarchy. Although Amsterdam is the historical capital, the democratically elected parliament meets in The Hague. The official head of state, Her Majesty Queen Beatrix of Orange, carries out a representative function, but wields no actual governmental power. There is much to see in Holland that recalls its glorious past. Time was when this little land, just slightly larger than the US state of Maryland, was looked upon as one of the world's superpowers. And though the role of the Netherlands has a more modest range today, there's still a lot going on here that brings others to its door. The harbour at Rotterdam, Holland's second largest city, the largest harbour in the world. The Dutch people have developed their country into the most modern of nations, democratic, cherishers of freedom and prosperous. The national currency, the guilder, is among the strongest in the world. One of the pillars of the economy is
flowers. Flowers are of enormous importance to the Dutch. The Netherlands is the single largest producer of flowers in the world. The decorative and elegant tulip is certainly the most famous Dutch flower, and for every Dutch person it's a symbol of national pride. Every spring, an amazing array of flowers appears at the Keukenhof Flower Gardens, the largest garden of its kind in the world. Although the Netherlands has built an excellent freeway system as well as a comfortable and punctual public transportation system, the average Dutchman still prefers to get around by bike. Bicycling here is something of a national pastime, and nobody, young or old, ever seems to get enough of it.
In the winter, the Dutch move from their favourite pastime to their national sport, skating. It's an age-old tradition with lots of room for variety, though most people prefer speed skates, just perfect for those long stretches of frozen river and canal. The Dutch have a word for which there is no translation: gezelligheid. It is really a tradition of warmth and closeness. An example is when the family gathers after a day's skating around a cup of hot soup.
Amsterdam, capital of the Netherlands, has no problem combining national traditions with international influences. Amsterdam came into being around the year 1250. On this very spot, a dam was built at the mouth of the River Amstel. A town began to grow around what is now the Dam Square. A town named for the dam on the Amstel, that's Amsterdam. And that town hasn't stopped growing for more than 700 years.
Even though the actual dam itself hasn't been here for some centuries, Dam Square remains the heart of the city. And regardless of its age, it's very much alive and well. Throughout much of its history, the dam has been a place where different nationalities, races and cultures have come to meet. for business as well as for pleasure.
In the 1600s, Amsterdam was the financial and political centre of the world. Through intensive trade and colonization around the world, the city increased quickly in wealth. The citizens wanted to express the power of their city in the form of an enormous city hall. It was built here on the dam, and it wasn't long before it earned the name the eighth wonder of the world by the burghers. This formidable structure now serves as a royal palace, the Amsterdam address where Queen Beatrix holds official audiences and receptions.
Similar architectural highlights abound here in Amsterdam. Through the centuries, many great architects have been able to bring their dreams to life. Every possible architectural style can be found and admired here. The lover of architecture can have a field day in Amsterdam.
The Jordaan is an area of the old city with an atmosphere all its own. A picturesque and charming village within the city. Hidden among the pulley hooks and invisible to the unsuspecting passer-by are little jewels that the city cherishes like a well-kept secret. The many wonderful little courtyards. The architects of times past managed to create tiny oases of quiet in the middle of the city. There's nothing here to remind you of the noisy life just blocks away.
In another part of the old city is Amsterdam's best-known courtyard, the Begijnhof. Founded in 1346 by a religious sisterhood, it is still used today as a home for elderly women. In the southern districts of the old city, a different and newer architectural style becomes prevalent. Sober, serious, yet beautiful. These houses were built at the beginning of the 20th century. One notable building is the high-rise designed by the famous architect Staal. Compared to anything that had ever existed in Amsterdam, it was so high that it was soon nicknamed the skyscraper, at the then soaring height of 12 stories. In Amsterdam, past and present are forever coming face to face. Architecture is no exception to this rule, and the daring results can be surprising.
The Bijlmermeer, southeast of Amsterdam's centre, is an illustration of how a 700-year-old city prepares for the 21st century. Public transportation to and from the old city is fast and comfortable. There's enough room out here to let the subway come up to the surface. In the Bijlmermeer, daring architectural experiments have been ventured, an exciting interplay of space and form built in deliberate contrast to the old historic city centre. Amsterdammers may have great respect for the past, but the Bijlmermeer proves they're also ready for any challenges the future may bring.
But the greatest treasure is found in the hub of the city. In fact, it is the hub of the city, the centuries-old network of canals. Amsterdam's canals were originally built as part of the city's defense system. They also facilitated the transport of goods and wares to the doorstep of any house. Each house was built separately, as seen in the individuality of the building styles. Because of Amsterdam's soft ground, the foundations of all the houses have to be constructed on piles driven deep into the ground. Today, concrete piles are used. But 300 and 400 years ago, the piles were made from tree trunks. Observing this, the great Dutch scholar, Erasmus, said, "Amsterdammers are the only people who still live in the trees." But then he lived in Rotterdam. With more than 60 miles of canals and more than 1,000 bridges, Amsterdam can justly be called the Venice of the North. The beauty and grace of the city's many canals remains modest and restrained. The Dutch are not the sort who like to show off. Most of these buildings were constructed at least 300 years ago, in what has come to be known as Amsterdam's Golden Age.
Through trade in far-off lands and colonization largely in Asia and South America, Amsterdam was able to expand its wealth and power. By the 17th century, the city had become the financial center of the world. Trading ships flying the Dutch flag could be found on every continent. At the beginning of the 17th century, Henry Hudson sailed from this harbor, destined to discover the river that would later be named after him, the Hudson River.
In 1623, 18 Dutch families founded a village on North America's east coast, on the banks of that river, and named it New Amsterdam. Today, we call it New York City. But the most important Dutch influence lay in Indonesia. Consisting of some 13,000 islands, the world's largest archipelago, it was the Netherlands' greatest and most valuable colony. Amsterdam profited from the trade that developed and became wealthy beyond measure. The seeds were sown for what is considered an important Dutch characteristic to this very day, the spirit of trade. And that commercial spirit is evident today in the city's numerous shopping areas. It remains a city in stride with the latest fashions. But the real Amsterdammer does his errands at the open-air market. He won't buy a thing until he's done some serious negotiating over the price. And even then, he'll tell you he paid too much. That spirit of trade is evident in every sector of society. After shopping, time for a delicious raw herring. It's a typical Dutch specialty, and there's a rather distinctive way of eating it.
Another quite different tradition in Amsterdam is diamonds. For more than 400 years, this city has been known as the City of Diamonds, and rightly so. First, a raw diamond is selected. The stone's value is determined on the basis of the 4 C's: clarity, color, carat, and cut, the form in which the stone will be polished. Diamond polishers bring out the beauty in a raw diamond. They polish each facet until the stone is able to catch and reflect the maximum amount of light. Like a tiny, brilliant fire, the diamond reveals an inner life in every color of stone, in every style of cut.
After it has been cut, the diamond goes to the setter who places the stone in a piece of jewellery, a craft which demands enormous skill. This is a place where small miracles happen regularly, and the marvellous creations that arise here show how very much at home the diamond is in the presence of precious metals.
One special design is the Eternity Ring, a circle of diamonds and a symbol of eternal love.
In the fields of art and antiques, Amsterdam is also at the forefront. In another section of the old town, called the Spiegel District, enthusiasts collect to their heart's content. Here at the Waterloo Plain, they use a somewhat looser definition of the word antique. The flea market is found in the old Jewish neighborhood of the city. The Jews of the old city affectionately called Amsterdam Mokum Aleph, literally translated, place number 1. And Mokum remains Amsterdam's nickname among Jew and non-Jew alike. For nearly 400 years, the Jewish people found a home here in which they could live freely, until 1940, when Nazi troops attacked Holland and began an occupation of the country that lasted 5 years. Many Jews were deported to the death camps, never to return.
Among them, Anne Frank and her family. In this old canal house, which had served as her father's office, Anne Frank and her family hid for more than 25 months. The house is now a museum which serves as a remembrance of the terrible time when the Frank family had to hide out there. Anne's favourite pictures hang there to this very day. It was among these photos that she wrote her diary. Her dream to be a movie star would never be realised. In 1944, the family was betrayed by someone who knew of their whereabouts. Shortly thereafter, they were deported to Germany, and Anne died a few months before the war's end. Young Anne's diary remains an incomparable record of those long days. Since its publication, it has been translated into more than 50 languages. It recalls a time which must never be forgotten.
With the war at an end, the Dutch regained their much-loved freedom. And before long, Amsterdam was getting back to being an easygoing, tolerant, and exuberant city. In Amsterdam's Vondelpark, there's always a lot happening on a beautiful summer day. A Dutch writer once said, "If I didn't live in Amsterdam, I'd go on vacation there." And Vondelpark is one of the reasons why. This is where many Amsterdammers come to enjoy a warm day, each other's company, and music. Lots of music. All kinds of music. A particular musical tradition in Amsterdam is the calliope. Though young people still tend to have their own preferences in these things.
Amsterdam is the city I love. It's my town, I just put it above. Here's where I live, where I'd like to stay, cause Amsterdam just makes my day.
Although the Dutch enjoy their free time, they also like to work hard, as they do here at one of the many flower auctions. Holland has the largest flower auction house in the world, right on the outskirts of Amsterdam, and the export of flowers is one of this country's most important sources of income. Flowers are big business in the Netherlands. Each year, many billions of flowers are shipped to every corner of the earth from here. Just as amazing, though, is the amount that never leaves the country. For flowers are an essential part of everyday life in the Netherlands.
Here, at Amsterdam's floating flower market, only the best and most beautiful can be bought of what Holland's flower fields have to offer. In Amsterdam, flowers are everywhere, all the time. They are the smile on the city's face. It couldn't happen without Holland's fertile ground, and it's easy to see how that came to be. Water. Water everywhere. Enough to build a house on. Amsterdam has some 3,000 houseboats on its canals.
It should come as no surprise that so much, in fact everything, happens on the water here. There was a time when one half of what is now the Netherlands was nothing more than sea. Since the 12th century, land has slowly but steadily been won away from the sea. Ponds and lakes were encircled by dikes, and the water was pumped out by windmills through canals and finally to the ocean. Today, more than half of Holland's 50 million people live on land reclaimed from the sea.
Even Amsterdam's international airport, Schiphol, is built on reclaimed land. On this very spot, the Dutch fought a sea battle against the Spaniards in 1573. It's for these reasons that the people here like to say, God may have created the world, but the Dutch made Holland. High technology is now at work keeping the nation's feet dry. In earlier days, though, the resourceful Dutch relied on wooden shoes. A simpler but highly effective solution for keeping out the moisture of that soft, mucky soil. Although it's now a dying art, there are still craftsmen who carve wooden shoes by hand.
Second part, what they're trying is to get at least 3 wooden shoes out of this part. Right. Now, you can ask yourself the question, why were people actually making wooden shoes in Holland? Well, there were 3 reasons. The first reason is that our ground is very wet, because a lot of our land is below the seawater level. And in the early days, they only had leather shoes, and the leather shoes were not waterproof, and wooden shoes are, so that's one reason. And the second reason is the safety. For example, when a farmer is milking his cows, and the cow will stand on his feet and will wear leather shoes, well, then he will shout something that I'm not allowed to say in this program. But if you got wooden shoes, you got a very good protection, because only the cap can break. And the third reason was that the laborers couldn't afford leather shoes, so they had to look for a cheaper material, and of course that's wood. So that's why they're making wooden shoes in Holland. Right. And that's the end result after 1 hour work from a part of a tree to the wooden shoe.
But there's more to Amsterdam than earthy handicrafts. Amsterdam's Stedelijk, or Municipal Museum, houses a formidable collection of modern art, including the works of such Dutch artists as Van Gogh, Mondrian, and Karel Appel, alongside Picasso, Chagall, and Andy Warhol. In the National Museum, het Rijksmuseum, art of earlier periods is exhibited. The highlights here are the finest works of the 17th century Dutch masters, including Rembrandt, and Vermeer. Not far from the National Museum is the Concertgebouw, the home of Holland's premier symphonic orchestra. It is considered to be one of the 3 best concert halls in the world because of its acoustics. The opera and ballet lover can also visit the brand new music theatre situated on the Amstel River. A bit further along, there's the Carré, an enormous theatre known for its world-scale expositions.
If you still haven't had enough, Amsterdam won't let you down. This city doesn't know how to quit. The nightlife here is varied, bubbling, and sometimes a bit on the fresh side. Amsterdam goes all day every day of the year. It's strange to think that a city that hasn't slept in more than 700 years can still look so young. From the peaceful little courtyards to the busy city life.
From the classic beauty of the canals to the modern urban architecture.
Amsterdam is able to combine simple folklore with the world class of diamonds.
It's a city that has it all.